Hello, everybody. My name is Devin Williams. I'm with the Office of African American Affairs. I'd like to welcome you all to the CARES Act informational webinar, where we're providing you an overall overview of grant access to the CARES Act. We're in partnership with NMFA, who's managing the program. And so before we get started, we'd like to encourage you to please comment if you have any questions. So I'd like to go ahead and turn it over to the CEO of NMFA, Marquita Russell.
Great. Thank you very much, Devin. I am going to get my screen started here. It takes me a minute because I've only done 900 of these, so you think I'd have it down by now. But in fact, every time. Okay. Perfect. All right, thank you all for having me today. I'm very happy to provide you additional information about this brand new program. I'll give you some information about it, but I'm going to just put you on warning that this is a short-term program. So we're encouraging all folks to look at this weekend and really make an effort to apply for the grant funds. Before I go too much further, I should just explain who we are. As Devin mentioned, I'm Marquita Russell. I'm the CEO of the New Mexico Finance Authority, and we are an agency that has been around since 1992. We've been helping your cities and counties fund their infrastructure projects. We have a variety of programs that we offer primarily for public infrastructure and capital equipment. So though we may not have helped you directly or your businesses directly up until now, you've likely benefited from some of our low-cost funding. Our mission is to advance New Mexico by financing impactful, well-planned projects. And for us, impactful means important, not necessarily big. It just needs to be important to your community. In the last 6 months, the legislature has entrusted the New Mexico Finance Authority to oversee 2 separate projects. The first one, it was as part of the first special session in June, we were named as the administrator of a $400 million small business recovery loan fund. Now, this loan fund provides very small loans up to $75,000 to businesses that experienced significant revenue drops, like more than 30% in April and May of 2020, as compared to those same months in 2019. And this is determined based on your reports over to the Taxation and Revenue Department. This is another short-term program, and it currently expires on December 31st. So I would encourage you to go to our website, which is nmfinance.com, and take a look at the Small Business Recovery Loan Fund, and just see what if that's something that can help you in addition to the grants program I'm going to talk about. The loan program is a little different than other things that you may see in other places. It is an interest-only loan for 3 years. The interest rate is incredibly low. It's 1.625%. It requires no collateral, and there are no personal guarantees. So the legislature did what it could to make this program as accessible to small businesses as it could. The grant program, which is a federally funded program, came about as part of the second special session, which occurred just before Thanksgiving. There, we've been provided with $100 million of the federal stimulus money, the CARES money that came to the state, and it is intended to help businesses that were hit hard by the pandemic, but it doesn't have some of those same revenue drop kinds of calculations as some of the other programs have. We have to distribute these funds by December 28th, so we're in the middle now of a big application push and education push to let folks know about the program and encourage them to apply as quickly as possible. The only criteria that the legislature gave the Finance Authority in creating this program is that the grants could not exceed $50,000, that it could not go to businesses with more than 100 employees, and that we ensured that we got this money out equally across the state and that there was fair distribution of the funds. We opened the program on Monday, December 7th, and we're going to run it till next Friday at noon on December 18th. So you still have 7 days, 8 days to get an application in. And we are not funding these on a first come, first served basis. So you still have plenty of time to get your information in, to submit a good application. It's definitely not too late. I mentioned that one of the requirements was that we make certain that there was a nice geographic dispersion of the funds. So we have set aside 40% of the dollars to go to businesses in rural areas. So $40 million has been set aside for businesses outside of really the metropolitan districts of Santa Fe, Rio Rancho, Albuquerque, and Las Cruces. If you are in one of those cities or you're within 10 miles of those city limits, then you'll have access to the funds that are in the other pool, and that would be the 60% of the funds. So $60 million for projects in those 4 metropolitan communities and their immediately surrounding area, and 40% for the other portions of the state. The legislation asks that we give priority to those businesses that they saw were hardest hit by the pandemic, and those were the ones in the hospitality and leisure industry. So we've done a similar thing here, which is to ensure that we have pots of funds set aside for those businesses. So 20% of the funds are available for business accommodation businesses, but those are hotels, motels, lodges, beds and breakfasts, that sort of thing. There's 20% being set aside for food service and drinking establishments, so bars and restaurants, catering operations, 15% for all other leisure businesses, and that's those that fall into the arts, entertainment, recreation. So, your bowling alleys, any other kind of movie theaters, regular, what they call legit theater, all of those things would fall under arts, entertainment, and recreation, batting cages. There's 3% set aside for a special kinds of tourism group called destination marketing organizations. I don't have a lot of information in this particular presentation about that, but if you are a destination marketing organization, please get in contact with us and we can get you more information about that. And then lastly, we've set aside 2% of the money for sure to go to these non-employer businesses. Those are typically those very small mom and pop shops that don't have any employees. Only the only employees are those that are owners. And then again, we are prioritizing these projects based on impact that the business saw over the last 8 months. So from April 1st through November 30th, we're looking at the actual cash receipts earned by each of the businesses. And then we're looking at also the cash distributions that were made. So we're looking to see what your profit and loss was on a cash basis during those months, April 1st to November 30th. And we're going to prioritize the application based on that profit and loss. The grants themselves are being made based on the number of employees that the business has. And so these are not contract employees. These are people that you're paying wages on, and you're reporting the wages to the Department of Workforce Solutions and the IRS. And there are about 8 different band groups. So if you have 1 employee, 1 paid employee, up to 5, you're able to get a grant for $10,000, and that's a flat amount. So it's not an up to amount. These are flat amounts. Anywhere from 6 to 15 employees, and you have access to $15,000. 16 to 25, you have access to $25,000. If you have 26 to 40 employees, you are able to access $30,000. 41 to 60 employees, you're at $40,000. 61 to 75, 45, and 76 to 100 is when you max out at that $50,000 level. Because we understand that so many of the businesses in New Mexico are seasonal employers, we're allowing applicants to select the month that evidences that employee base that we just talked about, anytime from January 2019 to November of 2020. So you have 23 months to select the month that best represents your employment. So if you are a very large business, like more than 100 employees, because this also includes temporary employees, you would probably want to choose something during the pandemic months. On the other hand, if you are typically a seasonal employer and you ramp up maybe in August or July of each year, then you'd probably want to look at the 2019 seasonal time frame to establish your base. So you're able to select the time frame from January 1st of 2019 through November 30th of 2020. But we're going to ask you for quarterly reports. So it gets a little confusing here, but obviously the first quarterly report for January, February, or March of 2019 would be that 3/31/2019. And since you've not yet made your quarterly reports for these last several months, the last one would be on November 30th of 2020. If you are choosing a month that is not within that time frame, so that's basically October and November of 2020, there are additional things that you could give us to demonstrate that, payroll records, that sort of thing. So if you're a newer business and you're really just getting started with your hiring of your employees after the reopening, we're here to work with you. Our job is to get as many folks qualified as possible. We are funding these applications, and as mentioned earlier, not on a first come, first served basis, but we're also not waiting till the end of December 18th before we start making awards. So we've set aside pots of funds for what we're calling application rounds. So the first application round went from Monday, when the application opened at noon, until yesterday at noon. And all of those applications, and there were just about 8,000 of them, we're prioritizing those and we'll start making awards next week. If you were one of the businesses that submitted an application in that time frame and you're not selected, then our next award is next round ends at noon on the 15th, so next Tuesday. We'll consider everyone that didn't get awarded in the first round, plus anyone else that submitted an application. We'll prioritize those and fund up to $35 million. So $40 million in the first round, $35 million in the second round, and then we'll do that again right at the end. So when the application closes on December 18th, if you've not yet been awarded funds, then you have access to the last $25 million that's been made available. So again, we're not doing this on a first come, first served basis, but there is some benefit to applying early in the process. We're going to encourage folks to just please apply once. It will mess up the application priority if you apply more than once, and we certainly don't want to inadvertently exclude one of your projects or your project as a result of a multiple application. So it's easier for you, apply once, and we'll keep in contact with you about the status of your application. Unfortunately, as many applications as we are now seeing, and we sensed this was going to be the case, we can't accept incomplete applications. So there's only a couple documents you have to upload, and we've given on our frequently asked questions and in other places, there's a lot of information about what to do if you don't have that specific document. You can do other things, but you have to give us information to work with because we are trying to verify that you are the business you say you are, that you are the owner of the business the way you say you are, and that it's not some fraudster who's taken over your identification in order to get grant dollars that really should go to you. So we are asking for specific pieces of information so that we make sure that that happens. We're trying to mitigate fraud and get the money into the intended hands. So if you don't give us everything, we won't be able to complete your application. As much as that hurts us, we would have to just turn it away. The grant dollars themselves may be used for regular business expenses, and those are expenses that you would see in your normal course, rent, payroll, marketing, that you can't pay now because your revenue has declined as a result of the pandemic. It's also available for increased expenses that happened as a result of the pandemic. So for those businesses that had to retrofit their organization, maybe put in a lot more panels, put out, if you're a restaurant and you needed to do more outdoor seating, get some of those heating units, even businesses that had to convert more of their activities to online presence, that cost of the web presence can be included as a regular cost. So it's very likely that your business had both a decrease in revenue and increased costs as a result of the pandemic. So we're seeing that most folks are qualifying right out of the gate. But we have to be able to demonstrate to the feds who are providing the dollars for us that there was actual loss. This isn't projected loss. This is actual loss that's occurred in your business. And I should note that there's a lot of grant programs that are going on right now. The cities and the counties all have access to similar kinds of funding, and our names are almost all identical, unfortunately. But there's a little bit of nuance in each of these. The thing that I would say is that our program is the one that's not requiring receipts. So we want to see evidence of it. You'll need to put information in the application that we'll capture and make available to the feds should they need it. But we're not asking for receipts. If we still have a question, because the feds have a question, we'll be back and talking to you about the additional documentation we need. But generally speaking, this is intended to be a very streamlined process. We don't want to see your financial statements, though we will want to capture financial information. We don't want to see receipts, though we do want to understand how your business was impacted. So we're going to ask you about your expenses. And then, I mentioned the other city and grant programs, city and state grant programs and federal grant programs. All of those are available to you, and if you've taken advantage of those, you're still able to access these dollars. So as long as you meet the eligibility criteria, and that's fewer than 100 employees, and that you're a New Mexico-owned business, then you are able to access the funds. So eligibility specifically means nonprofits, and those are 501c3s, which are the charitable organizations, specifically in the 501c6s, which are usually dues-paying organizations, 501c8s, which tend to be your benevolent organizations like your Eagles Club or VHW or those sorts of things, the 501 and other 501c corporations that serve veterans. So that could be a number of different nonprofits. They primarily fall under the 501c19 and c23s. But if you can demonstrate that there was some other that you serve veterans, you're eligible. And if you're a for-profit business, you need to demonstrate that you have at least 51% ownership by one or more New Mexicans. And we're going to look at basic driver's licenses in order to determine New Mexico residency. If you are one of those individuals that has moved here recently and is now a New Mexico resident but hasn't been able to update their driver's license, there's ways for you to document that. So please don't let these things that I've put on the page about what you'll need to evidence it stop you from looking into the application and applying. We understand that every business is just a little bit different and that people don't have some of the things that they typically would have just given the limited access to things like Department of Motor Vehicles. The application itself is accessed online. You get to it from our website, which is nmfinance.com. We're using a system called FormStack, which is highly secure, highly encrypted, and has some built-in logic and documentation processing for us. So you don't have to get an account, remember a password, any of that. You just go into the application and start. There's a drawback here, though, which is that once you get started in the application, you have to finish it because you can't save it and go back. That's the flip side of not having to create a user ID and account name, is that you have to do it at one sitting. But we've seen people do this application, and I think our first application was submitted at 12:04 on Monday. So certainly it's possible to get this done quickly. I don't think everyone had that kind of experience, though. We're requiring all applicants to have checking accounts at federally insured financial institutions. We're doing this for a couple of reasons. We will not be cutting checks when the funding occurs. We're going to be depositing the money directly into your bank account. It's one way for us. It's an easy way for us to demonstrate that the money went where it was supposed to go. And we're asking these institutions to be federally insured because they will have gone through some identification process to make sure you are who you say you are. We're going to be sending you emails the minute we know whether or not you are qualified. So when you give us your email in the application, please choose one that you use a lot. We use the same sort of process for the Small Business Recovery Loan Fund, and we found people were giving us their formal business email, but in fact, the one that they check frequently is their personal one. So give us the one that you check frequently, because if we need information from you, we're going to need it over a weekend or even in the evening. So we want to make sure we're able to get access to you. And when you're notified, you'll go to that email and you'll click the documents for a digital signature, and that's all you'll need to do. So you give us everything we need up front, and from then on, you're checking your email and accessing, should you be one of the fortunate ones, you're going to access the document through an online system that you can frankly use your cell phone for. And as I said, we're going to directly deposit these dollars. After the awards are made, we're going to be back to those people that were successful in getting grants and ask you for additional information from time to time. We want to be able to tell the legislators, the policymakers that gave us the authority to spend $100 million, what the impacts were. So, how many businesses stayed alive 6 months later? How many employees do those folks have? So those are things that we need to let our policymakers know about, so that should they try to do this again, they'll know what was successful and what wasn't. So this is important. They haven't done this very often that I know of. This is the first grant program that the state has offered. So I mentioned earlier, you have to do this in one sitting. I'm going to go through in a second the documents you're going to need. Plus, if you go to our website and go to our frequently asked questions, you can get that same list of documents. But make sure you have them in electronic form. Make sure you're ready to go when you sit down. It'll save you a whole lot of frustration. And I can't underscore enough my second point here, which is that incomplete applications, it hurts us to have to say no, but there's no other way for us to do it when you get the volume of applications that we're getting in. So please make sure they're correct. And when you give us an email that you use frequently, also check your junk folders and spam filters to make sure that someone from the at nmfa.net or at formstack.com can get through to you and they're not being filtered out by your spam. Okay, so here's what you're going to need. You'll need to know your North American Industry Classification System code. They call it the NAICS. On your tax forms, they typically call it your business code, but you've had to provide it either to Taxation and Revenue or to the IRS. It's the way in which the state, and feds track your business activity so that they can report on industries. So you've had to come up with one before. Make sure you know that one. And as I mentioned earlier, we're prioritizing these applications based on the profit and loss of the business during the pandemic, so from April to November. So you'll need to have your an understanding of your actual cash receipts, not revenues that you did the service and so you've billed for it but haven't been paid. That doesn't help you pay your bills. We really want to know how much cash have you got in. So that's what we need. Included in that cash would be any other federal grant program. So if you got a city CARES grant or a state CARES grant, PPP, any portion that's a grant. If you took on a loan, that's not revenue. So that's a loan. You're going to have to pay that back. But if you took on a grant, you got a grant, that will be included in your business revenues. And then similarly with the expenses, what have you paid out? What money have you paid out? And then we're going to divide that actually by the number of employees you have so that we can find a basis for kind of normalizing the difference between a 3-person department, a 3-person business, and a 75-person business. You'll need to actually upload your 2019 federal tax return if you are a sole proprietor or a single member LLC or partnership. That's likely going to be the Schedule C from your personal tax return. We just need to see that Schedule C. We want to see if you're telling us that you have paid employees. We're going to need to see a copy of the quarterly wage report that you submit to the Department of Workforce Solutions, because they have a really nice way for us to just capture a number very quickly. We can track down your tax ID number, we can double check your name, and we can get the number of employees with one document. So that's what we're trying to do. We're going to ask you about your bank account. I mentioned it has to be at a federally insured financial institution. We actually want to see a copy of a canceled or voided check. Pick it up, take a picture of it with your phone, preferably front and back, because again, a really easy way for someone to pretend to be you and get your money is to give us a bad check, just to give us a mocked up check. So we are looking very, very carefully at the checks that are being provided to make sure they're real. Also, we're going to actually ask you to input your bank information. If you've made, like I do, what I'll just call a fat-fingered mistake, and I've, misentered the information, this will give us an opportunity to correct it so that we can get the money into your account. And then the driver's license. So we will need a driver's license for the person submitting the application, as well as for any other additional owners necessary to bring the applicant up to that 51% ownership. So if you're a business that's owned by 4 people, each of whom has a 25% interest, you're going to need to submit at least the 3 driver's license that shows that you have the 75%. If you are 50-50 owner with someone else, we'll need to see both IDs, both front and back. And if you're a nonprofit, we get asked this a lot now. If you're a nonprofit, only the person submitting the application has to give us an ID. Nonprofits in and of themselves don't have owners, so we don't want to see your ownership, with just the person submitting the application at that point. And that, Devin, is the end of the basics of our application. I'm happy to answer questions. I'm going to note that we have set up a telephone line, CARES line. It's 992-9696. We are not as staffed on the weekend. I've had to, we're a tiny little agency, so we've had to convert a lot of my full-time employees to processing applications. We've got some temps in that are helping us, but we don't have as many bodies answering phones as possible. So we would encourage people to use either the frequently asked questions on our website, nmfinance.com. We are updating that regularly. So if we see a lot of questions coming in, we get that on the website. We want you to benefit from the question that your neighbor asked. So we get that added pretty regularly. We must update that at least once a day. But if you don't see it there and you can't get a hold of someone, please email us at cares@nmfa.net. That absolutely will be monitored through the weekend, and we get questions back pretty quickly, or answers back to your questions quickly. And we have different experts answering questions. So if you have, a tax question or an ID question or a bank question, get it to us, and we'll have different people who really know the answer get it back to you as quickly as possible. So that is my overview, and I would love to answer questions if you all have any.
Yes, and thank you again, Marquita, for coming on and presenting. I know that was a lot of information, and just to reiterate, if you need to fill out the application, go to nmfinance.com. I do have one question, though. Where do people go if they need help filling out the application?
So they can go to a couple places. The small business development centers in New Mexico are a really good resource, and they've already been helping a bunch of folks. They were able to get an early preview of the application, so they have a better sense of what this thing requires and what works and what doesn't work. So they're a great resource. If you actually need someone to help you kind of translate your finances into, like, what line would I put that in? Should I consider that income? They're a great resource. If you have a technical glitch, like we've seen that, we have some technology built into the application for fraud again. I sound pretty paranoid, but when you're given a whole bunch of federal money to give out as grants, you'd be amazed at how many people want to try to, game the system. So we've been on the lookout for fraud in particular. So we've built in some technologies, and it has created just a couple of glitches in a few instances. So, if people haven't updated their browser, or there are a couple of, if your email has been one that's been flagged as suspicious because it's been, spoofed a number of times, or that kind of thing. So there are some error messages that come up that aren't program related, that are really related to technology. You're going to need to give us a call for that. There's almost no one that can help you with that part. But if it's questions about the application, about whether you qualify, and you can't find the information on our website, email us, give us a call. Small Business Development Centers are great resources, though. And I think we have a list of those on our website.
Perfect. Thank you. And before we end this, I don't think there's any more questions that I see. Before we end this, is there anything else that you want to just drive home?
I think what I would say is don't um, don't don't be intimidated by the number of applications that have been submitted, because we are prioritizing them based on need. So if your business has been hit hard, we absolutely want you to apply for these funds. If you have the information ahead of you, frankly, the simpler the business, the easier it is to fill out. So we've seen folks, again, 1204 was the first application, took them 4 minutes to submit, and it was, it was a correct application. So it is not very hard. Please give it a try. We would love the opportunity to find out if you're eligible. And then just spend some time on our website. We've got this document. I've got other webinars up there. There's a lot of information there, but we just keep adding stuff to it because we know that small businesses run, they have a business to run during the day. So owners are going to need to access this information before they start at the office, after they start at the shop. They're going to access it during the weekends. So we've really tried to get the information onto our website.
Perfect. Thank you. And we actually did have a question come in. We had Ken ask, where would I go to get information on veteran assistance?
So if you are an organization, a 501, like a nonprofit organization that serves veterans, that's really all you need to know to submit the application. So but you have to be a nonprofit that serves veterans. That's what that special designation is. So, we just need to see a description of what you do and some of the other basic documents that are the same as every other business. So we'll still want to see a copy of the tax return for your nonprofit. That's going to be what they call a Form 990. So we'll still need to see all of those documents. So it doesn't really differ substantially. It's just you'll have to tell us that you serve veterans.
Perfect. Thank you. And again, to go to the website, go to nmfinance.com. We'd also like you to share this with as many people as you can. It'll be on our Facebook as well as our YouTube. And we'll also have it on our website at oaaa.state.nm.us. I think that's all I have. Actually, there's another question. Or no, that's just a comment. But yes, if you need any additional information, again, go to these websites. Please share this with everybody. We have a very short deadline, and we have to get this information out to really get to the community and take advantage of the resources that are available to us. But thank you again, Marquita, and we'll look forward to having everybody apply.
Thank you very much, Devin, and thank everyone for your time. I appreciate it.
Yeah, have a good rest of your day. Talk to you later.
All right. Bye-bye.